So this is a question I received in regards to a video where I said that a high protein diet is superior to a high carbohydrate diet when it comes to the gain of lean muscle mass. And the question is, what would be considered a high carb diet? And I guess I kind of misspoke. Technically, I should have said a high protein diet versus a low protein diet. However, when you're on a low protein diet, the percentage of calories has to be increased elsewhere. And in the majority of studies, the percentage of calories is increased in the form of carbohydrates rather than dietary fat. So most often, when you're comparing a high protein diet to a low protein diet, it's also comparing high protein versus high carbohydrate, because that is where the percentage of energy must be increased on the low protein diet. And I will typically find a very important point in most studies, highlight it, and screenshot it. But this is a meta-analysis that I think more people should read. And I could highlight almost the entire study. But in the studies that were a low protein diet, this typically meant 15% or less of your calories coming from protein. And a higher protein diet was typically around 30%. And they found that when overfeeding on a high protein diet, the majority, if not all of the weight gain came from lean muscle mass. But when overfeeding on a high carbohydrate or high fat diet, there was typically a greater percentage of the weight gained that came in the form of fat mass. This doesn't mean you can eat as much protein as possible, because 30% isn't as much as you think. Let's say you're eating 2,000 calories a day. A 30% protein diet would constitute 150 grams of protein. But if you're eating upwards of 300 or 400 grams of protein, there's likely a greater likelihood that you will gain some degree of fat mass. But it simply appears to be less likely than a high-fat or a high-carbohydrate diet. However, this is confounded by the fact that many of these are free-living populations. And it's extremely difficult to overeat protein because of how satiating it is. And most people don't just sit down at the table and think, I really want to eat a ton of chicken breasts. So it could be confounded by the fact that some of these participants didn't actually eat as much protein as they were supposed to, simply because they couldn't eat it all. Which is why, despite wanting these studies to be overfeeding studies, some of these participants didn't gain any weight at all. However, a lot of them did see body recomposition, meaning they lost fat and gained muscle. Yet another reason why overfeeding on protein might be beneficial. And in a study on obese women, comparing a diet of 15% protein to 30% protein in a 500 calorie deficit, the high protein group not only saw superior body composition changes, but also saw advantageous markers of stress and inflammation. There's a lot of reasons again that this could be confounded, such as a degree of insulin resistance that comes along with obesity. But it's just another study demonstrating that in many populations, a higher protein diet may be advantageous. And if you want to learn how to take control of your health and energy, send me a DM to sign up for coaching.